Welcome everyone to the Mayor Series with Greenleaf. Today we're very excited. We have Mayor Paul with us today. He's from Sandy Springs, which is just north of Atlanta, Georgia here. We have Andrew and myself. So Sandy Springs has both outside the perimeter and inside the perimeter, right? So it's like a little, that's kind of like the sticking point when you think about Atlanta. You're either OTP or ITP, but you've got both of them.
We cover everything. That's the great thing about Sandy Springs is we're going to treat you so many ways. You're bound to like one of them, and if you can live anywhere you want and still be in Sandy Springs. So,
and you're a pretty big city too. I mean, you're one of the biggest, second biggest city.
Second largest in Metro Atlanta, sixth largest in the state of Georgia, and what I say we're the newest, or excuse me, we're the oldest of the new cities in the state of Georgia. And Georgia had not, before Sandy Springs, Georgia had not created any new city since 1959, which was Peachtree City. So the state of Georgia, with all this, the population had almost quadrupled over that period and had not created any new municipal governments. They were trying to operate everything on using county governments. And the county governments are just not set up to deliver municipal services. So once we did it and proved that it was viable, in fact, beyond viable, it was very successful, a lot of other communities decided they want to do the same thing.
And so what were the first services that you took over as a city from the county?
Well, I knew things were different. Within about a week after we were incorporated, I saw a guy out on the streets with a shovel. He had a little hand-painted Sandy Springs penny on and a shovel digging out a storm drain. I said, well, I've never seen that happen under Fulton County, so this is a step in the right direction. So you had Even if we get the storm drains cleaned out, it was worthwhile.
The one guy with a shovel working for Sandy Springs. Okay.
Yeah, my panic was when we started paving streets, one morning I was out walking the dog and I saw this paving train come up my street. And I said, no, you're not paving my street as the first one in, after we become the city.
Oh, yeah.
And I was running out there to find out what was going on. I said, no, Mayor, I was a city council member at the time. I said, no, we're paving the one up the street. Don't worry about it. It's not yours. I said, okay, that's fine. I relaxed.
Not a good look for you.
Not a good look to have my street be one of the first ones paved.
Yeah.
So 2005, Sandy Springs comes into existence, and you're on city council. So you helped get this thing, like literally a startup business.
Yeah, it really was. My history with the city of Sandy Springs, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama area and came here out of college and then spent 4 years in Washington, D.C. As Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under Jack Kemp in the first Bush administration. Came back to the metro area after my tenure there, and we had actually bought a house. We'd gone to an auction. I figured being in the HUD for 4 years, I'd figure out how to get an auction price for a house. We had bought a house in Roswell. And one Friday afternoon, my wife called me and said, you need to come look at the house. I said, I'm working. I said, well, hey, what's going on? Just get in your car and come up here. I said, Jan, what is happening? He said, get in your car and come up here. So
yes.
I drive.
I'm married to you. Yes, I will do that.
Because we were living just outside Washington, D.C. I'd sold my house. I was the only person I know that got an ad for their house on the front page of the Washington Post. It came out, when the newspaper came out, we sold our house by 8:30 because they had written an ad for my house. The Washington Post was doing a story. This was the transition between the Bushes and the Clintons, and the Washington Post wanted a story about some hick coming from Arkansas, the big city, and they wanted one about a hick going back to, so I got to be the hick going back. And so I had written this article, or this ad for my background was marketing. I had written this ad that I told my real estate agent I wanted to put in the Arkansas Gazette, and it said, disappointed, disillusioned GOPer with only one asset incoming Clintonite might want, and described the house. I said, it's a shorter commute than Northern Virginia, better parking than Capitol Hill, and since it'll be well into the next Republican administration before you get Washington football tickets, you can go to the Naval Academy for football. And they ran that ad on the front page of the Washington Post, and my wife called me and said, there are people standing in our yard waiting to look for our house.
Like it worked.
So it worked, but we had to have a house. We'd already sold it. Okay. And when I come up there, and she and the kids are sitting in the yard, and I said, well, what's going on? I said, go look in the house. I said, well, Jan, what's happening? Go look in the house. I go look in the house. And you walked in, it's a two-story house, and I walked in, and I looked straight up into the sky. And what had happened, lightning had hit in the center of the roof with such force it parted the roof like a V. knocked out all the drywall ceilings on 2 levels. All the electrical appliances were hanging out of the wall and everything else. And I looked around and said, oh, we found the electric meter about 20 yards out in the woods.
Gosh.
And so I'm looking around and I said, Jan, can you imagine how cheaply we can get this house now? She said, we're not buying this house. So I had a friend of mine who lived in Sandy Springs, and I called her. She was a realtor, and I said, we got to find a house this weekend. And she took us around and around and around, and I didn't realize at the time she was just driving me around Sandy Springs because that's where she wanted me to live, so that one day I could run for office there. And so I tell everybody, I am in Sandy Springs truly by providential intervention. So that's how I got there.
So you could have been the mayor of Roswell. Then.
Could have been the mayor of Roswell.
Okay.
So I'm glad I'm the mayor of Sandy Springs instead. But anyway, we got the phone installed in our brand new house, and the telephone guy had no more left the driveway than the phone rang. I thought, well, maybe the phone company checking the line, and I picked it up, and it was a lady by the name of Eva Galambos. Eva was the matriarch of Sandy Springs and the person who drove the whole municipalization of Sandy Springs for 40 years. And Connie, the realtor, had told her, you got to get this guy involved. And so Eva called and got me involved in the whole incorporation thing. We just moved in. I didn't have anything to do. I was just starting my business and wanted to get involved in the community. So I joined the committee for Sandy Springs in 1993 and spent about 12 years working with Eva and the rest of the team to get the city. In the meantime, I was elected to the Senate, and Tom Price and I carried the legislation to create the city of Sandy Springs, and were unsuccessful like everybody else before us for almost 35 years. And then after I left the Senate and we had kind of a change in administrations, they finally got the bill through the legislature, and we started the process of actually putting the city together.
And is that bill the one that then enabled all the other cities kind of really to?
Well, it wasn't so much. Each city has to be incorporated individually, so they require their own piece of legislation. But what happened was when we did it, and within really less than a year, people saw how much better the services were. We had a cap on the taxes. We had put a cap in our charter so that the millage rate could never go up without a referendum. And later we came back and said that we also put a cap on the appreciation, so that if a period of inflation raised your home value, we could only raise the taxes based on the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, or 3%, whichever was the lowest. So people realized, hey, they're keeping their taxes low. They're really providing a high level of service. So suddenly Dunwoody, Peachtree Corners, Milton, Johns Creek, Stonecrest.
Yeah. So
they all popped up?
They just came out.
Who were second and third after you?
They came kind of in a cascade. It was Johns Creek and Dunwoody, and then Milton, and then the rest of them started. And we get people still to this day coming from around the state, around the country, saying, "How did you pull this off?" They come to learn because
it's complicated. It involves
it's very complicated.
Involves state laws.
Yeah, and state law requires you to provide a minimum of 7 services. They enumerate 12, and you got to do 7 of the 12. The legislature just this past year created a new city of Mulberry, which is in Gwinnett County. So they're still popping up. And it's because the constituents see the higher level of service. They see the efficiency of the government. When we had our first, we ran our first surplus, and there was a lot of conversation about do we give that money back to the taxpayers, or we keep it and continue to invest in infrastructure? And being, my master's degree was in campaigns and elections, so I said, let's do a poll. Let's ask them. And we did a poll, and I think the average household would have gotten about $10 in tax savings if we gave it back. And we did the poll, and over 70% of the folks, this was in about a year and a half after we started, and they'd already seen what we were doing. They said, keep it, keep investing in the city, keep building sidewalks, keep doing road projects, keep doing stormwater projects, keep building parks, keep doing the things you're doing. We'd much rather you use that money that way than give it back, give us $10 back. And so that's kind of the way we've operated ever since.
You know, and I live in Dunwoody, and so there's a big.
That's tragic, you know.
It's okay, Andrew, but
We've
you know.
got houses for sale if you'd like to move on over.
Well, I can't leave my house because I still have that 3.5% mortgage that I can't.
There's a lot of people.
But it's a whole different experience because there's a huge investment that your community has made in Sandy Springs infrastructure, and I guess you follow the Dunwoody bond, and we couldn't get new parks or trails yet. Just right down the street, you just have this the City Springs Theater, and so the City Springs Theater was a huge project and a huge undertaking.
$225 million of taxpayer funds.
220, and you had to ask the taxpayers whether
we did it. We didn't have to do that at the time.
Yeah.
We had been saving money for a while. I mean, this was we're like the 9th and 10th year of the city, and we'd been putting money aside, knowing that we needed to build the city hall. So we purchased the block that we have. We started buying that. Actually, most of it after I became mayor. We had already bought some of it. Sandy Springs is a lot like most suburban communities. We're a collection of strip shopping centers.
right. Whether you have no mall,
We don't.
Perimeter Mall is
Perimeter's in Dunwoody.
Right.
We've threatened to invade and take it over, but we haven't done it yet.
Have you thought about taking over anything by force yet, or you haven't tried to
I
take
had 3 Marines, my city manager, police chief, and a couple others, and they were bored, needing something to do, so I thought we'd invade Dunwoody or Roswell or something.
Well, aren't you kind of close to the stadium too? Like you could have had the stadium.
Yeah, when I told people when I got elected that the Braves announced that they were moving to the area when I first got elected, and I was running around telling everybody I've been mayor 3 weeks and already got a baseball team, and tried to talk the city attorney in because we could go down 285, cross the river, Chattahoochee River, and hang a right and get new Braves battery complex.
The Sandy Springs Braves.
And the city attorney looked at me like, "Come on, no, I'm serious. See if you can do it." And he found too many obstacles to be able to do it. So without a baseball team.
Well,
right
don't
now.
tell Mayor Deutsch, but I do go to your free concerts.
Well, that's all right. That's all right.
All right.
We she's real smart. People want her to build something similar to what we've done at City Springs.
We have a little version in Brook Run,
Yeah,
but
she
not
said,
like.
it's much cheaper for you to just go to Sandy Springs and enjoy theirs, which I appreciate. The only thing I ask is when you come to town, spend some money.
Yeah, I'll have dinner there. So
okay, good.
I spent some money.
Then
I
it's
spent some
worthwhile.
money.
It's worthwhile.
So when you get started as a city, you basically have no tax revenue. You got a little bit of a team.
Right.
Just 3 Marines. That's a good way to
Marines.
that's a good way to whip people in shape
Volunteer
right
team
there.
too. Don't forget it's a volunteer team, not a paid team.
Yeah, it was all volunteers.
Yeah.
I mean, the volunteers had to hire the city attorney, city manager, all the other positions that we needed to set up the city. We did have elections in November before we started on December 1st, and so we did have some city council members. I was one of them, but we were still having runoffs. We had 2 council seats that were still unfilled when we started the city. But yeah, we started on December 1st, 2005. We're about to celebrate our 20th anniversary. And we didn't really get any serious tax money coming in until the following October. So we had about 9 or 10 months to try and set up a complete new city with no revenue. Try that trick.
Yeah. And being new and something that hasn't happened in Georgia while there wasn't really anyone to kind of like copy or emulate.
You made it all up
We
essentially.
wrote the book as we went.
Yes,
yes.
yes.
But the good news is that the 35 to 40 years that we were waiting and working toward it, we had plenty of time to think about it. And we had studies done by Georgia State and by the Vincent Institute at the University of Georgia. So we had the paper studies, all the analysis and the academic insights in how to do it. And we had done a good job of getting ready. All we had to do was really begin to put the plan in place. And this was all Eva Galambos. She's the person who deserves all the credit.
So do we need to interview her too? Or?
If you don't mind going to Arlington Cemetery. She's
okay.
engaged.
All right.
She's downsized to a smaller house.
Downsized a little bit. Okay.
But she was a phenomenal lady. I mean, when I was in the Senate, we'd go through and end up on the last night, and I would get home about 3 o'clock in the morning because we went till after midnight. And by 8 o'clock, my phone was ringing the next morning, and it would be, Eva, what do we got to do to get ready for next year? I said, Eva, I'm still suffering from last year. Can we wait this? No, we got to get ready for next year. And she was just that intense, driving personality that refused to quit.
And so, always the interesting thing is, how was the county response to all of this? So the county commissioners?
They weren't thrilled.
They weren't thrilled,
in fact,
but there was
less than thrilled. In fact, they were just anti the whole idea.
So were able to throw in roadblocks for you not to do it?
For years. That was the real problem because of their influence at the Georgia General Assembly had delayed it and kept us from getting the legislation needed to incorporate. We had a change of administrations when Sonny Perdue ran. Sonny and I served in the Senate together. When he ran for governor, we actually ran his campaign out of a building I owned in the north end of Fulton County. So Sonny was very familiar with what we were trying to do. And when he became governor, and then the Republicans took over the House and the Senate, we were able to finally get it done. Sonny helped put his shoulder to the wheel and get it done. The legislators, we had a lady who served in the House of Representatives for almost 25 years, Dorothy Felton. She was the driving force in the legislature. So people were familiar with it. And through Eva's work and the whole committee, we had a team that was very well versed. And secondly, Sandy Springs had a huge history of volunteerism because we didn't have a government, and we set up these quasi-governmental nonprofits. We had our own planning and zoning.
Like the Dunwoody Homeowners Association,
yeah.
Like a Sandy Springs Homeowners
It was really
Association.
even more granular than that. We had a group of engineers and planners who were what we call Sandy Springs Revitalization. They were doing the planning for land use 20 years before unofficially, just putting the plans together and so on. Committee for Sandy Springs was working on the governmental structure. We had Leadership Sandy Springs, which were training people to run for office and those sorts of things. So we had all these volunteers that were going on. We had the concert series. In fact, the City Springs project we have today was, I'd just been elected mayor, and we had a lawn, what we call the Heritage Lawn, where we have a Sunday afternoon concert. I saw 2,000 people sitting up on the hillside having a lot of fun, doing what I call building the connective tissue of community. And I said, we need more of this. We'd already bought the land for the city hall,
right?
And we're getting ready to start planning that. But I said, we need more than just a warehouse for governmental operations. We need a community center where people can come together and do more of what I was seeing up on that hillside. And that's where City Springs came from. We started talking about it. We'd always wanted a small theater. We felt we needed that.
That's not a small theater, though.
It's not a small theater.
Yeah,
it's a medium-sized theater. Yeah. It's about 1,100 seats.
And is that, Fox is still a little...
Fox is 3,000. The Cobb Energy Center, which is about 2 to 3 miles away, is about 3,000.
Okay.
And we did a lot of studies to see where the sweet spot was.
Yeah.
And the closest theater of that size was at Clayton State College. And so we went into that niche of a smaller theater, but it's not small. It's 1,100 seats, and it's perfect. It's great. It's functioning well. Now we opened it just before COVID, so it put a dent in our
on the business plan for that one just a little bit. Yeah. So, I've been there multiple times. I just went to the Jewish Film Festival there. I think it was there, and after. The horrific, October incident. Like there was a big event.
Yeah.
At City Springs Theater.
We had a celebration is definitely the wrong word. A commemoration.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that was all last minute. Like you did that within 24.
We put that together in 4 days.
4 days.
And we had 8,000 people, 1,000 people in one theater, 500 in another theater, and the rest were outside. We broadcasted outside, and we had over 6,000 people stream.
Yeah.
An event after October 7th and the Hamas attack in Israel. We have a sister city relationship with a cluster of communities along the Lebanese border.
Right.
And so after that happened, we had that rally. I reached out to our friends in the Western Galilee and said, okay, what can we do? What can we do to help?
Right.
And they said, help the hospital, because the hospital in Nahariya, which is right in the middle of where our sister city relationships were, It's 6 miles from the Lebanese border. And it's an amazing hospital. It's underground operation. They have the ability to operate under conventional, biological, and chemical attack. And so they needed some equipment. And so in Sandy Springs, we got Jews and non-Jews together and said, we're going to help the hospital. We raised about $500,000 for the hospital in Naharia.
That's pretty amazing.
To buy some equipment that they needed. So, we're a very caring and giving community, and not just about us. It's not inward. We try to do the same thing.
Right. And you know what? In all of the messages I've seen from Sandy Springs and everything you do, I mean, there's no politics about it. It's about supporting the local community, it's doing good, and just being a community. And I mean, that's the whole point of your City Springs.
Yeah, it is. I've served. I was on another city government in Metro Atlanta, in Stone Mountain.
Right.
I was probably too young to vote. And then
They didn't check your voter ID.
they didn't. The rules were a little looser then.
Yeah.
And then I was in Washington. I served as Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. So I had the federal experience, had the local experience, then served time in the Georgia State Senate. So I've had federal, state, and local. And I just want to take my experience in those three levels and put it together to really help our community. For example, we just got just been notified we've got $18 million coming from the Atlanta Regional Commission to finish a trail project. We got a trail with a gap, about a $22 million gap. We're getting $18 million to help fill that. Knowing how all these levels of government work and how they interact and the best way to approach each one of them, we've been able to utilize that experience to bring resources into the community, not just our own resources, but tap other sources of funds that other communities haven't been able to utilize. We're able to go back in and try and, all right, we can come up with the matching money or whatever we have to do to bring those resources.
So something's obviously working.
Yeah, we're trying. We get up every day trying to make it better.
Yeah.
That push to have connectivity between all different parts of any city is something we hear a lot of, and even in the city of Atlanta, the Beltline project, we're like, how do we just get one neighborhood to be connected to another neighborhood with walking?
Well,
it's not like it's a crazy inventive idea, but it's
in Sandy Springs was a rural area up to the 1950s and early 60s, and that's when the Atlanta began to expand.
Right. Somebody explained this to me a long time ago, but there was like Atlanta, a bunch of green space, and then there was like that Dunwoody, that kind of like where North 285 is, and it was
well, if
completely disconnected.
Atlanta, when I first moved here, my dad's oldest sister moved here in 1964, and if you were talking about going from Atlanta to Marietta, which is now considered fairly close-in suburb,
right?
That was like a day trip. You were going to a different part of Georgia to go to Marietta. Same way to Decatur. I mean, Decatur was a separate part of Georgia. It wasn't connected to Atlanta at that time.
Decatur was not. Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I mean,
Wow.
it was totally distinct.
So we're going on an adventure.
Right.
We're going to go all the way to Marietta and
You
back.
were leaving civilization to go to those places. At least that's what the folks in Atlanta thought. And so that area began to develop in the 60s and accelerated in the 70s and 80s. And so when we became a city in 2005 and started doing all these improvements, we were having to retrofit transportation, the road projects, storm sewers, sidewalks into a mature, fully developed community at that point.
Right.
Which makes it expensive and disruptive. But people have been pretty patient while we go back, because we promised them these things when we created the city, that we would take the money that's generated here and we'd reinvest it into making your life better. And we're doing that, but the short term, your life is not going to be better. It's going to be really
During
painful
construction.
while we're doing this stuff.
During construction is always painful, but once it's done.
People have been pretty patient with us because they've seen us deliver projects before,
Right.
and they know that there's a short-term pain for a long-term gain.
Right. And I know that, I mean, everybody talks about this. Not only people who live in Sandy Springs, but Roswell Road.
Yeah.
Roswell Road is a fun little project that it seems like it's an artery through Sandy Springs, so it's not only for Sandy
State
Springs.
highway, too.
Right. And so you have to somehow manage that whole, you essentially have a little highway in your
It's
city.
not a little highway. It's a state highway, and it connects, it's one of the few north-south corridors that we have.
Right. And are you responsible for that, or is the state responsible for that?
Well, we have joint custody.
Joint custody of it.
Yeah,
okay.
they have to approve everything we want to do, But GDOT's been a good partner.
Because it's not a good experience. I guess you know this because you.
Well, as I was saying, this was a rural area.
Yeah.
And there were no city planners, and so what they did, they just simply took the old farm roads and paved them.
And made them as wide as they can get.
Made them wide as they could.
There's a road there. You might as well
just use the road.
use what's
and
there.
That's why these roads kind of look like spaghetti, laid out there because there's no pattern. Most cities are laid out on a grid.
Right.
And east and west is streets, and north and south are avenues, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 3 are westbound, 2 and 4 are eastbound, and it makes sense. Nothing about Metro Atlanta.
You just take that and mix it all up.
Yeah, you just
and
drop
then it
all
works.
that stuff and see where it lands, and you pave it.
And you throw in a bunch of hills too.
Rivers and hills make it challenging.
Rivers and hills. Yeah.
Most cities are fairly flat. They're on coastal plains or along rivers, and the area is flat. We're one of the city hall is sitting on one of the tallest mountains in the state of Georgia. It's
City
called
Hall?
Mount Vernon. Yeah, it's called Mount Vernon Highway. There's a reason it's called Mount Vernon Highway because it goes across the mountain ridge of Mount Vernon.
I did not know that.
You can sit up. I sit up on Mount Vernon. I'm looking down at Andre Dickens in Atlanta, making sure he's behaving down there.
That's good.
Do you have a contact, by the way? We're trying to interview.
This is what it's there because he had the 3 Marines, and we had to know where we pick, and we're picking the high ground.
Oh yeah, we took the high ground. That's
we need to get him in this chair. But
Well,
I never thought of it because it is. I mean, but I never thought of it as a mountain because when you're driving up and down, when you go that direction.
Andrew, that's why they call it Mount.
Yeah, it's Mount Vernon Road is like
he thought it was like a secret.
half a mile from
there's
my
got to be
road.
a
We
puzzle
have
to this.
Mount Perrin too. That's another one over there.
But it's just like a mountain road where they put a bunch of dirt and put a road on it.
They
Right?
just leveled the top of the mountain and made a road. It was an old Native American trail, and so it made sense to them. And so when the settlers moved in, look, hey, it's flat, it's rugged, and they're using it, so let's pave it.
And I just thought about this, but if you go up 400, you drive on the side of 400, and there it is, that big old gigantic rock wall.
Right.
So essentially, it's the same thing that goes up and
you
down
go
that
up,
corridor.
You get up, you go up 400, and you hit Northridge, another mountain up there. It's on so.
All these mountains that I never knew about.
If you come to Georgia for just super creative, what we're going to call things. But so the city starts. You've gone through 20 years now, and you mentioned before that you have to have 7 core services that you're at least doing. And Sandy Springs has gone through a mix of partnerships where they have outsourced groups doing services, and now some of that has been brought back in to Sandy Springs.
Well, we started down this path, and then I took us off on a detour. So let me bring us back. When we started the city, as I said, we had no money. We went 9 months with virtually no revenue coming in. So how do you stand up a police department, fire department, a permitting office, code enforcement? How do you do that? Where do you get the resources to hire these? And they're not people. We discovered that people are not going to work 9 to 10 months without pay, which was an unsettling experience.
I didn't know
it's a tough sales pitch.
It's a tough sales pitch.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So we came up with an innovative solution. It's called OPM, other people's money. We looked at outsourcing because we didn't have any money of our own, and we were going to outsource to all of these services. And we had two RFPs, one for the public works and the permitting and all of that sort of stuff. And then the other one was about mostly the administrative pieces of government. And so we put those out there, and we had a lot of bidders at first. And then all of a sudden, the companies were dropping out. And we kept asking, well, why are you dropping out? We said, well, nobody's ever done this before. And so our risk managers can't figure out what the downsides are. So they wouldn't let them bid. Oh. And we had this engineering firm that was based in Denver, Colorado, called CH2M Hill. They're now part of Jacobs Engineering. And they wanted the public works and permitted. They knew they could do that. And they decided that they would bid on both of them because they thought that might give them a leg up on the one that they really wanted. What they didn't know how desperate we were to find somebody to do the other pieces. And so they bid on both contracts, and we accepted it. And the next thing they knew, they were putting up
they were doing both.
They were doing both. They're setting up the whole city. And it was a great partnership. I cannot say how grateful we are still today to their ability to help pull us together. They really, once they realized, all right, well, we've got this contract, we got to go make it happen, they jumped in and they brought a team together and helped us set up the city and did a phenomenal job. in getting us there. And we had that contract, in Georgia, you have to rebid your contracts periodically, and it's really a series of 5 one-year contracts. So at the 5th year, we had to rebid. And we discovered, there were some challenges. For example, the department heads worked for a private contractor, but they reported to the city manager, and there were some divided loyalties. I mean, do I listen to the person who writes my check, or do I listen to the guy who's supposed to be running the city? So the second round, we split the contracts into smaller contracts, and we made the department heads city employees to remove that conflict that was there. Then each of the department heads became contract managers. And so we did that for another 5 years. And when we went back to bid again in 2010, we were coming out of the 2008 crash and recession, and there was a lot of work. And so we had the bidders were basically charging a premium for the work. And we sat down and did some analysis and said, if we hired their employees, we could save some money. And we thought we would save about $2 to $3 million a year.
Right, because they're making money off of you. There's no secret about that.
I had Al Jazeera, which is the Arabian news, came to
Al Jazeera came here,
and nobody would interview with them. I said, I'll talk to them, and they said, that those companies are making profits. I said, yeah, and I hope they're making a good profit. You know why? Because if they're making a good profit, they're going to want to make sure that they keep these contracts. And the only way they're going to be able to keep these contracts is if they keep providing a much higher level of service than anybody else is
employees,
getting.
Right.
And so we knew we were paying a premium, but we were getting some benefits out of that. We were getting flexibility. When you hire city employees, it's very difficult to fire them. They come to work with a slightly different mindset. My contract's going to be up in 2
government
years.
job. They can't fire me.
The private sector,
your contract is up. You're trying to prove that you can keep it.
You're trying to keep it. You want to stay here, and so you gotta, you wake up every day motivated to go to work and really do the best you can. And there was the incentive for innovation and creativity that comes with a profit motive. And so, yes, we're going to save money, but we're going to lose some things too. And we were aware that we were doing some trade-offs. We went ahead and did it because we thought maybe we could maintain the that creative mindset, that innovation, that flexibility. But it's proven that we have lost a good bit of that.
Really?
And it just is in the nature of the beast. But we still do a lot of outsourcing. I mean, we have a lot of private sector companies that do work. More than just, everybody bids out their road work and their construction, but we have other services that we still bid out.
So what are the biggest challenges? Like which type of job function or which type of city function is the most challenging as far as people and resources?
Well, they're all challenging at a certain level. I mean, clearly in today's world, police particularly.
Well, police are, every city and county is in competition with each other, hiring police officers right now.
And trying to get people to go into law enforcement today is a real challenge. My uncle was a police officer. My brother-in-law was a police officer. I've got a nephew who's a police officer in Metro Atlanta. And I can tell you that it's one of the toughest jobs on the planet. And with things that went on a few years ago, we would have officers come in to work, and they love their job. They love working for us. And they would come in and tell their supervisor, my wife or my husband or my significant other said, Don't come home tonight as a police officer. You go home, you quit. I don't want people to know, and don't bring that police car home because I don't want people to know. We let them take the police.
They get to use their vehicles
because it's a force multiplier. If you park that in a subdivision, people tend to behave better.
Yes. In fact, I think most police departments now they take their cars home. Do your police officers take their cars home? Okay.
But their significant others were saying we don't want people to know that they're police officers.
Oh wow.
Living here. So don't bring that car home and quit.
From the real estate perspective, it was always like if we can have a resident who is a police officer and we know they're going to be in that area, it's like they're already there. That's a pretty big help to start with.
It does change the mindset of people who want to misbehave.
I used to give police officers half rent if they lived in my community. Yeah.
Well, we're one of the few police departments that has a waiting list to become
a police force. Yeah.
And
I think did someone advertise that Sandy Springs is the highest, or are you one of the highest paid police forces?
We are. We pay them well, but I tell you, I had a boss tell me one time, what you get paid is how you keep score. You don't show up for work because you get a paycheck.
Right.
You show because you enjoy the work and so on. What you get paid is how you keep score against other people. And the same way with police officers. They want to be properly compensated. I don't know that you can ever properly compensate a police officer or a firefighter. But more importantly, they want to know that if I'm putting my life on the line, I want to know that you appreciate that. And in Sandy Springs, they do. We recruit officers. We get officers from Boston, Portland, all over the country.
Wow.
We've got a new officer just started, was a state trooper in Utah. They come because they of our reputation. And they come in and they ask and they go through the interview process and they say, well, and this is the most important question they often ask was, well, how does your community feel about police officers? And we put them in cars and we drive them around. And all over town, you'll see little yard signs, we support Sandy Springs Police. And I said, this is what our community thinks about us, that they put signs of support in their yards. But more important, we take them to lunch or breakfast or whatever in a restaurant. And if they're wearing their uniform, somebody's picked up their breakfast or lunch. They don't have to
We should
pay.
try that.
Wear a uniform.
What, if you wear your uniform, I buy you breakfast?
Yeah, we get a free lunch. Is that bad? That'd be a bad one, wouldn't it?
During COVID, we had a 3-week waiting list for people who wanted to cater lunch for the whole police department.
Wow, that's amazing.
That kind of community support makes a huge difference and makes you a popular place for those people who want to work in law enforcement to come be part of that team.
Yeah, you might want to tell your police chief that I was driving out of Dunwoody today, and there was a sign at Ashford Dunwoody and 285. It says $15,000 bonus for Dunwoody police officers right now.
Yeah.
So you might want to get a sign too.
Well,
He's got his army. They'll go take
There's
the
a sign
down.
that's advertising that right now.
we shall be competitive. Of course, they're trying to compete with us. They're trying to
Oh, I
compete
know.
with us.
I know all the counterparts over there. So, and they talk about it a lot because, I mean, honestly, a Sandy Springs police officer and a Dunwoody police officer is a lot different. Their job is a lot different than a City of Atlanta police officer or a Heart of DeKalb
Still a
police
tough
officer.
job.
They're
Still a
all
tough
tough
job,
jobs, and it's just a different job, and it's like a.
How many people are on the police force right now?
We have about just shy of 150 sworn officers, and we have some other, some administrative personnel. And so
And is that like the biggest? You look at the teams within the city. Is that the biggest team of people?
It's one of the larger forces. I mean, look at the City of Atlanta. They have.
I'm just talking just in Sandy Springs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sandy Springs. Yeah,
And that's your largest division.
largest number of
Employees.
full-time employees. Yeah.
Right.
Then we have the fire department, which is a little less.
Oh,
than
that's
that.
right. I forgot because you run fire, and because Dunwoody does not run fire, but you guys run fire.
And so Sandy Springs, you do all your own services.
Mostly, we don't provide library services because the county does that, and we thought they were doing a decent job with that. We don't have our own water system. We do buy water from the City of Atlanta, though we're in litigation with Atlanta because we think they're charging us. Well, no, we don't think. We are convinced they charge us too much for water, and they're not putting money back into the infrastructure. We want to get control of the infrastructure. We've had, like the City of Atlanta, we've had our share of significant water outages, and we want to make sure that we have a resilient water system.
And do you have the same problems as DeKalb or not? DeKalb's going to like double the prices over the next, is it like 5?
Well, we found out that it's cheaper for Atlanta to provide water to Sandy Springs than it is for them to do their own water system because their main water line goes through Sandy Springs. So their water gets to Sandy Springs before it gets to Atlanta. So, and water, you're not supposed to charge more than what it costs to take it from the source and deliver it to the tap. You're not supposed to make a profit on water because it's necessary for life.
Right.
And so we're in litigation with Atlanta, and in fact, we actually got a hearing coming up fairly soon that'll get us.
Interesting. Yeah.
There's a lot of people suing Atlanta, though.
Do they own the whole? Do they own all the underground pipes?
They own the water in there. There's no question about that. There's a dispute about who owns the pipes because Atlanta didn't build the water system. The developers, when they come in, they put the water system in, and then they deed it to whoever the provider is.
Oh, so the actual water main, the pipe in the road was done by a private business.
And they got to connect them.
About 90% plus of the system was done by the private sector and then deeded to the provider.
So these gigantic water mains were done by
the big ones were, the 36 and 48 and 60-inch pipes. Yeah, that was done by Well, a joint venture of the city of Atlanta and Fulton County.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they own equally the water system that comes through there.
Yeah.
Water's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean,
You kind of need it.
you
I
kind of
learned
need
more
it.
about
Yeah.
water than I needed to know. That's for sure.
So when you go home, who is excited to hear about the water system?
You have a
My
couple
golden
of grandchildren.
retriever's the only one.
That's the only one that's going to pay
attention.
attention.
You have a pretty large family too. You have
I have 5 kids. Yeah, we have 3 daughters and 2 sons. And for an Episcopalian, that's a large family. You know,
and grandchildren.
grandchildren, 9 boys. We have no
9
girls,
boys. No
girls,
granddaughter.
no
Haven't
granddaughters.
ventured into that side.
And there's something in the water that's creating
That's
this problem for us.
is that what the city? That's what the lawsuit is over, right? Just creating more boys and not enough girls.
I'm not sure it's in the water or the air or something, but we haven't been able to. None of my kids have been able to generate any females.
So have you given them all the assignment that you want a granddaughter, or you're kind of giving up on that one?
Well, we're about running out of time. If you want to know the truth, we had 2 born at the end of 2024. One on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and the other one 2 days before Christmas. And
Wow.
the males of the household, looking toward the future cost of education and other, are saying we're done. I have a daughter-in-law who's not sure, so we'll find out.
There's some maybe potential.
So there could be the nine
be
grandsons and 1 granddaughter.
Yeah, but
Maybe.
if they go to 10 grandsons, then they got to give me 11. I need a football team.
That'd be great.
And so what kind of what do you do with your grandkids? What's the fun?
Well, my wife babysits them all.
At one time?
Well, sometimes. I mean, I left this morning. There were 3 of them there. Yesterday, there were 2 of them there. And my wife just luxuriates in being grandmother.
So do you and your wife give them all the stuff that their parents don't, and so you're the cool grandparents?
My wife, we have an annual event called Tossed Out Treasures, where everybody cleans out their attics, and it's called upscale. Anyway, it's all the good stuff. You can't just throw. It's not like a yard sale.
Right.
It's got to really be nice stuff. And we have a group of ladies, 300 ladies, called Sandy Springs Society, and they collect all this stuff through the year, and they sell it on one weekend and use all the money for various charities across town. And my wife is one of those 300 people, and for the last 2 years, all she has done is bought out all the toys. My living room looks like a Toys R Us.
So this came as an idea to get rid of things, and it's turned
supposed to be
into
getting rid
a
of things. And we had a
the
deal.
opposite.
We had a deal that if whatever she brought home, she had to get rid of something of equivalent size and so on. That deal is not working.
Have you thought about renegotiating the deal with your wife?
Yeah, but Middle East peace is a lot simpler than that.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is the one you just wave the white flag on,
Yeah,
and
just
don't walk
She
barefoot
was complaining last night about we've got to clean out the garage. I said, Jan, if you'd quit filling it up, I wouldn't have to do this every day.
That's the proverbial we.
And she's
it's
scared,
like, is that
yeah,
a you have to clean out the garage, or we have to clean out the
You
garage?
learn that.
Yeah, I listen a little bit sometimes, but it's
it took
like
me a while to understand that the first person plural pronoun was actually the second person
that was more.
singular pronoun.
It's like a task assignment
Yeah,
process.
In other words, we comes me. And but I've been married now 40 years, so I finally figured that out. I'm a slow learner.
And so it only took you a few years to figure that one out.
Yeah.
And so what else does the mayor of Sandy Springs do on the weekends?
Well, mostly my wife's to-do list, unless I can escape town.
And are you good with tools and doing stuff?
Doing stuff, yeah. I have a farm
Okay.
about 2 hours west of Atlanta, Sandy Springs, north of Birmingham, that has been in my family since 1880. My great-grandfather bought it from a guy who ultimately would become my great-great-grandfather in November of 1880, and it's been in our family ever since. And it's an heirloom, clearly. I feel like something out of Yellowstone, trying to protect this legacy land that we have, not nearly as big as a ranch in Montana. But I grew up on that farm, and it was my grandfather's. My grandfather was the youngest son, and his brothers and sisters, when he came back from World War I, told him that if he'd stay with his parents and take care of them till they died, when they died, he would inherit the farm. And then I grew up on that farm. So I bought my uncle's piece, and it's my first cousin, my sisters, and me own about 160 acres, and I have the biggest chunk of it. And I go over and get on my tractor and lay waste to about 15 acres of hayfield. That's my mental release. And there I have about 10 beehives. I've been a beekeeper since I was a teenager.
Fun.
And still doing it. And I keep hives. My people say, well, do you sell your honey? I said, my wife uses most of it in cooking. I harvested 2 of the hives last year with about 7 gallons of honey, and
that's a lot of honey.
About to run out because she uses a lot of it in cooking and other stuff. And of course, people say, well, do you ever get stung? I said, yeah, still get stung. Well, does it hurt? Same as the first time.
So you're not allergic to bees then?
I swell up like everybody else. Everybody's allergic at certain levels, but I don't have to keep an EpiPen to get my heart started.
Do you do the big white?
Oh, yes. I'll go out in my full armor.
You go out in full armor, and you still get stung through the armor.
I still occasionally do that, and mostly when I've left gaps. It's like Achilles, who's got the arrow in his heel.
Yeah.
I generally leave a gap right about here. Don't get the zipper all the way up. And they are amazing at figuring out every little hole.
Find it.
Yeah, I used to have some hives in Sandy Springs, and one morning, one of the TV stations wanted to come out and see me play with the bees. And so I had a full suit on, and I put the suit on over it, but I had a gap right about 4 inches of sock exposed. And bees, when they sting, they release a pheromone that tells the other bees, attack here.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there on live television, and they're hitting me.
Getting lit up.
And I got to be cool, calm, and collected while my ankles are on fire. And so fortunately, one of them went over and popped the cameraman, and he said, I think we're done here. I said, thank you. I think I'm done too. 13 stings on each ankle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So this whole thing where people go out without their armor, and that's a fictitious thing where people...
No, it depends on the conditions. When we were building City Springs, I got a phone call one day when there was from one of the staff members said, Mayor, we've got a swarm of bees over here. Will you mind coming over and taking a look at it? I actually had my equipment in my truck at the time because I was going to rescue some out of somebody's house.
Right.
And so I just swung by. I got a bucket from Home Depot and a towel and all my equipment for transporting feral bees. And so these contractors, these tough construction guys, they're back about...
No, they're like, hey, we're not touching this thing. This is not part of the assignment today.
We're not here.
And so I'm in a short sleeve shirt. It's like about this time of year, it's early spring. And they're all hanging from a piece of concrete about yay high off the ground. So I put my bucket under there, and then I take my arm and sweep them into the bucket.
Bare arm.
Oh,
boy.
And these construction workers think, this guy is the toughest SOB we've ever seen.
Who is this guy? Like, that's the mayor over there. He does all the bee
totally
removal.
Fearless. But what I had knowledge that they didn't know. Before those swarms leave a hive, they gorge themselves on honey because they're not going to eat for a while. Right. They got to use that honey to create the wax.
Right.
And they got to store the honey, and they got to go out, and the queen's got to lay eggs. And all. So they're going for several weeks with
So they're
no
looking
food.
for something right now.
Well, what happens is they're so gorged with honey, to sting, they have to bend their abdomen. And they're so full they can't bend it. Unless you mash them against you, they won't sting.
Okay, gotcha.
So I had knowledge that they didn't know. That inside knowledge which allowed me to go out and look tough. But I'm really not.
It sounds like one of those hold my beer moments. You're like, I don't know about that. You're going to stick your hand on that thing?
I would work it up saying, yep, I'm doing that. I'm touching the bees.
I would not.
I get called whenever there's swarms around town. I'll probably start getting calls any day now.
Is that your part-time job? Like managing bees around Sandy Springs?
To eliminate bees, but I get called out for hornet's nests, and anything that stings, most people think is a bee.
Do you charge for this?
No, I just like the free bees. If I can get the free bees,
but the hornets are no good.
No,
and then you just drive them out. You actually drive them out to Alabama then?
Well, or I'll put them in the backyard for a while until they kind of catch up, and I can keep an eye on them. I had a couple of years ago. I had ones that family called and said their yard workers were not coming back until those bees were gone out of a crepe myrtle. And I got there, and it was they had already built a nice little nest, and I had to go home and get my shears. And I asked him, said, you mind if I cut this? No, whatever it takes to get rid of those things. And so I put my bucket under them and clipped them, and they fell in, but a lot of the bees were started flying around. So I was pretty certain I had the queen in there, which all the other bees, she releases a pheromone.
Right. They all follow her.
So I left the bucket there and knocked on the door, and they peeped through. I said, I'm going to Starbucks, get a cup of coffee. I'll be back in about 30 minutes, and I'll take them away. Because in that time, those bees will then go into the bucket. I can throw my towel on top of it and then take them and go. And there'll be a few left, but not many. And so that makes me a hero when I can relieve a family of their distress.
Right now, I think in the video we should put Mayor Rusty Paul call for bee.
We need a bee advertisement.
Phone number right here.
Yeah, just don't call me for yellow jackets or hornets or wasps.
Okay,
You know,
we'll put that on the video in the little
Or if
subtext.
they're in your wall, a lot of people they move into the house. And I'm not tearing somebody's house down to get to bees. So there are people that you can pay to do that.
All right, somebody just told me about bats. Do you do bats too?
Don't do bats.
You don't do bats,
Don't do
okay.
bats, no.
All right.
Just the little honeybee.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So City Springs was built 2020, 2019 timeframe, right before COVID comes out.
We went into it, and we opened in May of 2018. We started building it we started the planning in 2013, and then we started the construction in late 2015, and then we opened in May of 2018.
And you said this was not a bond, but this was just
We did issue bonds.
You did issue bonds, okay.
We put about $50 million in cash. We'd been saving cash.
Right.
And the rest of it was bonded. We bonded about $150 million.
Okay, so you kind of have a mortgage on it, essentially.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
we got, we did well. I fully expected that after we did this, I would be unelected.
Well, I think it's for me, who doesn't even live there, I think it's an amazing facility.
Yeah, well,
I was telling him about this before this date. You have to pay attention to the City Springs.
Try and persuade people of that before they see it.
Well, evidently you have a more generous city than I live in, so for whatever reason.
What happened was, and we talked a little bit about the Braves, and there was
the Sandy Springs Braves?
Well, yeah, but they are, when Tim Lee, who was the commission chairman in Cobb, brought them in and did all the stuff, he lost the next election.
Okay.
Lillian Webb, when she was the mayor of Norcross years ago, she was county commission chairman Gwinnett when they built the
Forum area.
Yeah, the Gwinnett Arena area.
The arena. Okay.
And she lost the next election. So looking at history, my future didn't look very bright.
Yeah, because Cobb County was pissed about that stadium.
So was Gwinnett at the time, but now people.
I don't think they're mad right now.
But
maybe
knowing that history, I believe that the city needed that desperately, and I was willing to if I was a one-term mayor but got it done, I was willing to do it. Fortunately, we opened just after the next election, and people were already seeing the transformational impact of that project, and so they elected me again.
And so is the trails component now one of the biggest?
One of the biggest things we've got going
on?
Yeah, the success of the Beltline has really kind of changed people's mindset toward trails. Everybody wants their trail network. We had already started planning and discussing it several years before, and then, of course, as the Beltline got more and more popular, it added more and more impetus to what we were doing. So we're about to open really the first trail segment up along the river on the north end, what we call the Springway. Our network will be called the Springway. And we've been building some segments connecting what we call Path 400, which parallels Georgia 400. And we've built a couple of segments there. We've got about a 2 mile or a little less than 2 mile segment in between, which is about a $22 million project. And we've been way beyond what we could afford to do on our own, but we've been working with the Atlanta Regional Commission, and we feel very comfortable that they're going to come up with a big chunk of the money that we need to be able to do that.
Yep.
Where does that money come from?
Well, that will go down 400, and that will actually connect into the Beltline.
Oh, it'll
and
go all the way
ultimately
down.
will come all the way up to the river and connect into another trail network that we're building up there, the Chattahoochee, and we'll parallel the Chattahoochee River ultimately. And we're building a trail that will connect City Springs with the MARTA station. We're working with the Perimeter CID, Community Improvement District, to make that happen. So we've got a number of trail projects underway. People want more. In the old days, you had to get in your car to go everywhere. People want alternative ways to be able to move.
Go on a walk, and the kids want to, you want to ride your bike.
And so you ride the bike, roller skate, skateboard. People
But so,
say,
I mean,
can I use my golf cart? I'm not sure we can do that yet.
These are multi-year projects.
Yeah,
you don't
oh.
just throw one of these down.
These will be like, if you remember the interstate system, we started in 1956 and ended most of it in the 1970s.
Yep.
This is something of a similar scale, not quite as big, but as far as the cost is about the same today. But, it will create interlocking network that will allow people recreational. Because the whole thing that people in cities today is about quality of life. And the attitude that people have about where they live has changed significantly. When I was young, if my dad got a phone call from his boss and saying, "Hey, we're moving you to Chicago," my dad would never question it. He'd come in and say, "Mom, we're moving to Chicago."
Right.
If I got that phone call, I'd get a lot of questions about why are we going to Chicago? Why are we doing this? But ultimately, we'd pack up and go. It's like when I went to Washington, okay, we all go. My kids have a different attitude, and the generation today, they figure out where they want to live first, and then they start looking for a job, and they're looking for quality of life. What am I going to be able to do? How's my life going to be better by being here? Because my parents were Depression era generation, and a job was something you got and held on to.
Survival mode.
Yeah, you didn't.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the millennials and the Gen Xers and the Gen Zers have never gone through anything like that. And so, to them, it's about finding I think they got the right idea, truthfully. Let's go figure out how I want to live my life. Let's go there, and then I'll figure out what my work's going to be.
Yeah.
And so if you want to be competitive in today's world, you have to figure out what the quality of life is that these young knowledge workers are looking for. And in fact, we've had 2 studies done within the last year that shows that Sandy Springs is the 4th largest city for millennials in migration, because we have really focused on City Springs and the quality of life. We started when I became mayor. We created a restaurant council. Sandy Springs was a restaurant desert. We maybe had 3 or 4 decent restaurants. People were going to Buckhead, Dunwoody, Roswell to eat. So we focused on bringing in really good chef-driven restaurants, and we've been very successful. We now have almost 200 restaurants within 2 blocks of Roswell Road from the city of Atlanta to Roswell. You can eat everywhere in the world in Sandy Springs,
including grasshoppers.
Yes.
What's that? There's a restaurant that serves grasshoppers.
I'm not going to say their name, but I'll say this: there's not a cuisine in the world that you can't get in Sandy Springs today.
Yes,
you can go around the world and never leave Sandy Springs from a cuisine point of view. And that was a conscious effort, because we knew we had to focus on creating a great quality of life. We have, the perimeter CID, that perimeter market, is the tax base for the city. And we have more Fortune 500 companies there. I hope this is still true, and I think it is, than Pittsburgh in Sandy Springs. We have Mercedes North American headquarters. We have UPS's world headquarters.
Yep.
We are the graphic packaging paper center of the world. We've got Smurfit, West Rock, Veritev. We have graphic packaging. We're the franchising capital of the world. We've got Inspire Brands, which is Buffalo Wild Wings, Arby's, Sonic,
a whole bunch of Focus Brands too. My wife actually works at Focus Brands.
They got Annie Ann's and Carville ice cream, and
the Dunwoody. There is that whole connection between Dunwoody and Sandy Springs with the perimeter area. And someone told me that whole area, it's the largest business district in the Southeast, is what I heard.
That's correct. And we're the global and regional and national headquarters for a lot of major companies. We just got one brand new one. We've actually 2. Asbury Automotive, which is a big automotive company, and Kuho Tires is just announced they're moving into Sandy Springs as well. So we're kind of a great place to do business, because in Sandy Springs we're the junction of 400 and 285, and we've got we've got 4 MARTA stops. We count Dunwoody's as one of ours, because we had to give that to them to get them to vote for the thing to begin with. But so we've got these transportation hubs that are coming in, and so you can recruit all over the metro Atlanta, and they can go down. We've got an intellectual basis. We've got Georgia State, Kennesaw, Georgia Tech, all in very close. Kennesaw teaches their MBA program in City Hall. And we also include Auburn and Clemson because they're two big engineering schools within an hour and a half. So we've got the intellectual capital. We're one of the most highly educated communities in the Southeast. So companies like, we've got the intellectual capital for research and we've got the employee base. And
you have no reason to actually leave the area either. The area has enough just to keep you
and with the quality of life, we've put it all together to really make it a hub for these young knowledge workers that everybody wants to get.
So we look at like the competitiveness of cities going forwards and how do they attract the best. You want to have the best quality of life, and you want to have that brings the best people to your city, and ultimately brings the best companies that are going to be there.
That's it. So. The companies are located because it's like everything else in real estate. It's location. They've got the ability to get there. Now that most of the construction at 285 and 400 is done, they can get there fairly painlessly compared to the rest of the metro.
But there's going to be a version 2 of this coming over the next 5 years.
Yeah, we got the managed lanes that are coming.
Yeah, the elevated lanes.
Yeah, but they'll be a little less painful. Not that would be without pain.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, while that's all been going on, we've been upgrading. I mean, we've got the Mount Vernon project that's going on right now. The Mountain Vernon project, and we'll start very soon another east-west project on Hammond Drive, which probably next year we'll do the same thing, which will increase the capacity east and west, and again provide that mobility that creates the quality. Nobody wants to be sitting in the middle of traffic. I mean, people complain
here's an idea for traffic. Let me make this pitch to you: Roswell Road, golf carts only. What do you think of that?
All kinds of people would love that, but I tell people,
if we can get a business license to sell golf carts in the middle of it.
Yeah. I'll work on that one with the state legislature.
So you're doing the infrastructure projects. You got to do that with Georgia DOT.
We're doing most of that with our own resources. We have what we call a transportation special local option sales tax, which generates about $100 million every 5 years, and we're plowing that money back into these projects. And so that's being done largely with local resources.
Yeah.
But people complain about and congestion is still, anytime you live in a metro Atlanta, any metro area, I don't care, Dallas, Washington, New York, San Francisco, Kansas City, all have congestion. And I ask people complain to me about, we don't even do any more building here. We got too much traffic, too much congestion. I said, when are you most upset about congestion? And they look at me with this quizzical look. Like, what do you mean? I said, the only time you complain about congestion is when you're part of the problem. You're sitting out there in your car. If everybody, if you weren't out there and everybody else doing the same thing, there wouldn't be any congestion.
Right.
It's a fact of urban living. And it's very difficult when you've got to go retrofit it like we do. But, you can make things easier. You can make things better. You can improve that mobility. You can provide alternatives like trails where you can ride your bike. If you're living in Sandy Springs and you're working in the perimeter, it's a 2-mile bike ride. Guess what? I'll get there faster. I'll be in better shape.
On your electric bike.
On your electric bike or your scooter or whatever, whatever mode of transportation is your choice.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the time today.
Well, thank you for having me out.
This has been great.
As you can tell, I have a lot of opinions and I'm willing to share them all. Maybe too many of them. But if you ask me a question, you're going to get an answer. So
thank you for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me out. I love talking about my city, love talking about my community. So anytime I get a chance to do that, I'll take the opportunity.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. Mayor Paul here of Sandy Springs. So thank you for joining us.
Glad to do it. Thank you.